The official call is under review. Let's go to the monitor.
Welcome, everybody, to another great week of football. Probably one of the best weeks we've had recently, but I'll let y'all decide on that one. It's a pretty good week, I will say that. It was a pretty good week. 4 overtime games. 2 of them were our games of the week. It was just really good football.
What was that?
It was my chair.
You gonna fall on your head?
I don't know.
Well, we're gonna crack one up for it, man. That was just honestly as the close games were, the play from even all of our games of the week and everything that we had down I was all from 11 o'clock to I think 11 o'clock last night when we quit watching the Colorado game. I know it wasn't anything that we had on, but we had some stuff in our pick'ems. But just really good football this week.
It was, and being just part of watching great football, I'd have hated to been at work yesterday during all those games.
Yeah, it was just last night. I said the last slate of games, I guess the 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock games, there was like 4 really good ball games on. And it was most of our games of the week.
Yeah. It was, like I said, it was good football. Well, before we get started and get into everything and hot and heavy, let's take a quick moment and get a word from our sponsor.
This episode of the Under Review podcast is brought to you by Chuck's Heating and Air. Chuck has over 40 years of service and experience with residential services. He services most makes and models. He is Alabama licensed, bonded, and insured, and locally owned and operated. Are you hot and you're supposed to be cool? Are you cool and you're supposed to be hot? Then you've got a problem. Call Chuck. Area code 256-892-2757. Again, 256-892-2757. Chuck's Heating and Air.
That's right, Chuck's Heating and Air. We want to thank you for what all the services you bring to us. And
I was talking to him.
Sorry,
that
was
disgusting. I was talking to him yesterday, and he is fixing to pick up hot and heavy. So,
well, yeah, everybody's cold and they want to be hot.
Yeah, they're going to turn the air on, and it's going to smell like a
Blake Horvath.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's going to smell like.
Well, let's get into our first matchup. Don't piss me off today.
It's already.
21 Missouri Tigers traveled to UMass and faced the Minuteman in a final score of 45-3 as the Tigers had more than a minute.
Right. I think Mizzou went through the drive-thru and ordered another cupcake sandwich here. There was really nothing exciting about this game. Number-wise, 461 total yards against UMass. I figured they could have put up a little more. Passing 230, running 231. So they were fairly even there. Their best player, Marcus Carrell had 91 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, just nothing to jump up and down about, but it is another cupcake win for the number now 21 Tigers.
And what I didn't know, which hurt me in the long run in our fantasy game this week, that Nate Noel was out and will be out for the next 2 weeks. And that's why Marcus Carrell got so many yards and carries and touchdowns today. Or yesterday. That's why I lost by 3 points.
3 whole points. Who'd you lose to?
I don't know. Some bearded hillbilly, I guess.
Good. You gonna hit me? I can't read good.
But the stats for this game was Brady Cook, 14 for 19 for 73%, 219 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then, like we said, Marcus Corral with 15 carries, 91 yards, and 3 touchdowns as he fills in that void from Nate Noel, who's been doing exactly that, what he had last night. So, no drop-off at the running back position, but it was a 1-6 now Minuteman team who hasn't proved anything all season. So, I mean, Missouri, eat your cupcake, add a little frosting to it, and come back to SEC play next week and try again with the big boys, I guess.
Oh, WCW logo where the big boys play.
The next matchup we have was actually, surprisingly to me, was a close one, even though the final score was by 10 in favor of the Georgia Bulldogs, and that was 31-41 Georgia over Mississippi State inside Athens.
Yeah, as with this game, like I said, it was only 10 points, but during some parts of the game, it got a whole lot worse. The score was a whole blown out. The one thing I did like, Mississippi State does not have a lot to look forward this year, but they didn't quit. They really played all 4 quarters, and, they scored, 21 points in the second half. And Georgia only scored 14. But still, Marcus Van Buren, he really went out there and put the the ball on the back of his shoulders and ran through, 20 for 37 with 3 touchdowns. He was really, their best player. Is he a freshman?
True freshman.
True freshman. See, and that's one thing, just real quick. There was, just through all the games that we watched, getting a little off topic, but there were so many true freshmen playing in these ball games that really had a lot of impact. Not for just like Ryan Williams at Alabama or some of the LSU guys that I seen during the Ohio State and Oregon game, but wow, what a difference college football makes now with these true freshmen coming in and having to step in early roles and making their team competitors.
Before I get to the numbers here, this was the most Mississippi State has scored inside of an SEC game this year, and it was to the number 5 ranked Bulldogs. They scored 28 against Florida, and then have a couple if and outs. But put 31 on a Bulldogs team for Mississippi State, I'd feel pretty good.
Yeah.
But Georgia only decides to play about one half a game, so. This one was first half.
The total numbers for Mississippi State don't look that bad. 385 total offensive yards, 306 in the air. Really struggled in the run game with only 79. But then
but when they play against Auburn, they run for 139.
Well, you know how that goes. But Georgia, on the other hand, 605, really top-notch numbers. Again, against a 0-3 conference team in Mississippi State, 459 in the air, 146 on the ground. This is another point I want to get to before we get to other games. But I really thought that all of our Heisman contenders from the SEC really just laid an egg this week.
I don't think there is any Heisman contenders inside the SEC right now. And that's just the way I'm feeling about it. You have Alshon Jenti running all over people. You have Travis Hunter doing his thing. Dylan Gabriel starting to come back in the mix a little bit. But with those guys, you can have a case for Jalen Milroe. You have a case for Ewers coming back after injury. Dart.
But even with Ewers, he's still. We'll get into the Texas game, but I thought he struggled. What was Beck's numbers real quick?
Well, let me get into Mississippi State's numbers first, and then I'll get into Georgia's. Mississippi State's Michael Van Buren went 20 for 37, 54%, 306 yards. Not bad numbers, 306 yards, 3 touchdowns. Against the Georgia team, I'd take that any week. 1 interception, and then Kevin Coleman, one of his receivers, 8 receptions, 103 yards. And then on to the Georgia side, Carson Beck, 36 for 48, 75%, 459 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. And then Arian White, 5 receptions, 134 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I don't want to say Beck struggled. He still put up 450 yards. But still, the 2 INTs look bad. Granted, against the Mississippi State team, you play a really good team, and them 2 interceptions could really dictate the end of your ball game. I think his stock went down some, which with all the other teams, I think, a leading contender is not going to be in the SEC as far as the Heisman.
Like I said, I don't think so either, but we'll see going back to some later games. But as of right now, I'm just not gung-ho about an SEC player winning it this year, much less actually being invited.
Yeah.
Let's go on down to our next matchup. As we had one of our multiple overtime games this week, as the Florida Gators forced overtime in Knoxville, but Tennessee prevails 23-17 as Rocky Top almost flopped.
I like that one. But, with that being happened, this was Florida's best game they put together and played all year. I was kind of surprised. They did, Mertz got hurt late in the fourth quarter, but during that him and Lagway did split up some time. 361 total yards for the Gators, 138 on the ground, and 223 in the air, which I was surprised at how stellar Tennessee's defense has been, that they really allowed this many yards.
Which is going to bring an interesting question going into next week, when they play Alabama. So it's, but we'll get into more of that with our guest picker next week. But for right now, I won't say I'm worried, but I had a buddy ask me, I had a Georgia fan ask me yesterday at work. He said, do you think Billy Napier's going to get fired after this week or stay after this week? I said, the way he played against a pretty good top-ranked 8-number team in Tennessee, he played good. I still think he's about at that 5, a steady simmer. So, nothing really drastic in this game. I mean, you knew he was going to lose this game. He almost won it. So, that being said, I think he still prevails and keeps being the old ball coach down there in Florida.
Yeah, I thought once the game was over, I was really thinking to talk to you about it. I think the simmer's still on, but I think this gives him another week. Like I said, this was a super close game. They definitely had a chance to win it, and they didn't get blew out by 28, 30 points. So I really think this helps his case for staying another week. I don't know. Their plan might be to run him all year. I just, I think this helped him, but I don't think it's going to save him.
Could be. And like I said, 23-17, Tennessee over Florida in overtime as Graham Mertz went 11 for 15. 11 for 15, 73%, 125 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Left to an injury in the fourth quarter. Looked like about an ankle injury or something of that nature. Not really sure, not speculating. Find out more next week. We'll probably let y'all know as soon as we do on the Facebook page. So stay tuned if you care about anything about Florida. But rolling on here, DJ Lagway, 9 for 17, only 52%, 98 yards, which hurt him. 1 touchdown and 1 interception on his first throw when he came in.
Yeah, their quarterback play was good enough to keep them in the ball game. But on the other side of the football, I really thought that Sir Nico struggled way more than he should have. He got into that decision making at the end of the game that we talked about in the last game. I mean, 16 for 26, 196, 1 INT, no touchdowns. But again, like we talked about with Georgia, I think his Heisman stock took another hit again. And I think next week is going to be a really big week for contender and pretender with this game coming up against Alabama.
And the rest of Florida stats: Montel Johnson Jr., 12 carries, 85 yards. And then Jaden Robinson on that defense, 7 tackles, 4 solos, 1.5 sacks, and 1.5 tackle for losses. And then, like Marty said, Sir Nico, 16 for 26, 61%, 169 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. And then Tennessee saving grace this year is the only reason they're staying in these games is the big man on campus, Dylan Sampson, 27 carries, 112 yards, and then 3 touchdowns once again.
Yeah, most definitely the MVP of the game. And right now for this season, I think, besides where Nico showed off the first couple of games. He's really been a big part of why Tennessee is a top team in the SEC.
Yeah, it's going in next week, there's still questions out there. I don't know if next week will answer a lot of our questions, but it has a lot of implication on how we're looking for the SEC championship game and the college implications some more, as this week did it as well. But next week is going to be a whole nother thing. So let's just, as they say in no, just keep rolling.
As long as they say somewhere.
There's the Vandy Bell as the Dandy Vandy Commodores go down to Lexington, Kentucky, and did what we thought they would do.
Yep.
20-13 Vanderbilt, and what a performance by Diego Pavia.
And first of all, that was a clean sweep on our picks. Me, you, and Hayden all had the anchors down. But again, this is not a surprising fact that Diego Pavia was the man. He really he's got that dog in him. I mean, I know he don't get a lot of credit because this Vandy team, but wow.
Back a little snippet before we get into my stats of the Vanderbilt game. Hayden Coker from the Hayden Coker Show in the Hayden Coker Media Center, or whatever you want to call it, did it, went 5-0, and keeps the streak for games of the week undefeated alive as Hayden Coker goes 5-0, picking every single game right he had this past week. So once again, I don't know how the man does it. I talked to him last night. I don't know how he does it, but congratulations, buddy.
That means if he got all the games of the week right, then we did too.
No, we didn't, because we split. He picked Oregon. We picked Ohio State.
I just picked Ohio State.
Yes, you did.
Well, bite me in the left ankle.
It did. Diego Pavia, 15 for 18, 83%, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interceptions, along with 14 carries for 53 yards. And then Cedric Alexander, 11 carries and 88 yards. And then on the Kentucky side, Brock Vandergriff, 15 for 25 for 60%, 158 yards, 1 touchdown. Demi Sumo Karambai, 12 carries, 59 yards. And then Jamin Dumas Johnson on the defensive line for Kentucky, 9 tackles, 6 solos, 1 sack, and 2 tackle for losses. As it was a good game. I watched a multi-view from the whole game, but that game was watching Diego Pavia just masterclass, and then he got hurt and then comes back in and does it again.
Right, he really did. Pavia is their leader on the field. We've learned that week in and week out, but I think the biggest turnaround and the, not say surprising thing, but Coach Clark Lee has really been the biggest match for this team to keep them on fire. I've watched the last couple of weeks, so I've watched his interviews. I've watched some of his post-game comments, his talks to the team, and it's really motivating. I think he's really got something brewing in Nashville. I like it. I'm a Clark Lee fan. I just want to see how far this Vandy team can go now with a kind of unsteady SEC.
Yeah, that's 4 wins. That's 2 away from a bowl, so it can happen. I'm actually rooting for Vandy to get a bowl over Auburn this year just because I like the underdog story of
most definitely.
I haven't been in so long. I mean, Auburn, we're working on stuff I could care less right now. I mean, yeah, it's going to piss me off at the end of the day, getting beat by Vanderbilt or something like that. But
hey, I'm going to that game.
Oh, God, I hope they don't lose.
Telling me.
Well, we've already went 0-1 because I went to Arkansas and got beat there. But, going for Vandy, they have a chance to do something remarkable. There's a lock-in for 1 win already next week. They got bought. Well, it's not a lock-in. It is Vandy. But, if going back to that Georgia Southern State, one of them, whoever they was, we had
Georgia State, I think.
They would have won that game. They win Ball State. They're already eligible for a bowl game next week.
And if you can remember back to the 1 or 2 first episodes that we had, that
we only had 2 games.
Exactly. And not to say that we ever doubted, but that's how everything looked. And that's
just how Vandy has been the past couple of years.
Exactly. And that's why I think with Clark Lee and Pavia and the team around them is really just something fun to see. And I like it. I like the colors. I like the color scheme.
It's a great one, and I've already read through the stats. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just gonna move on down to the Magnolia Bowl,
which we didn't know what was.
Still don't know what it is. Like you said, I guess they just want each other's flowers. But that is the Magnolia Bowl, who hosts Ole Miss went into Death Valley, and a final score in overtime, 29-26, in favor of the LSU Tigers.
So we're in the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 2 strikes, and LSU hits a home run for a walk-off win.
Lacey is the dog.
Yes,
One play, 25 yards. That's all it took.
No, and it was, like I said, I was talking to Brittany back and forth because she was already ready for bed, but I walked back in there. I said, well, Ole Miss just sent it to overtime. They got a field goal. She says she wanted Ole Miss to win because she don't care for LSU. So I no more turned around, walked in, seen him throw the bomb, walked back in the bedroom. I said, well, LSU won. She says, no, they didn't.
It's gone.
Yeah, and it's gone. This right here, this was an instant classic right here for any SEC fans, most definitely for LSU fans. If what they do, this was a brutal game. LSU 421 yards total offense, 337 in the air, and only 84 rushing yards, which is a little shocking. But Nussmeier really just was throwing bombs, making the right calls. Did I read that right? Yeah, I did. But the crazy thing is, Todd, that Ole Miss led in all the categories in this. They had 464 total yards, 284 in the air, and 180 on the ground. I mean, if you look at this on paper, Ole Miss should have won this ball game.
Yeah, time of possession was around the same. First downs was exactly the same, and the same exact amount of turnovers. So, just a
this
wild.
Was at the look, scroll back up to where the game chance winner is. It's up, and right there hits the. This was a really good ball game. I think a big factor of this was Death Valley. This is where teams go to die, and with this loss to Ole Miss, I think they're done. They're out of the playoffs. Jackson Dart's Heisman's in the can.
He still played good. Jackson Dart.
Right.
Jackson Dart, 25 for 42, 57%, 284 yards, but only 1 touchdown and 1 interception. So he evened himself out. Really wanted to see more. And then the big headline was, as Henry Parrish Jr. was hurt for most of this game, Ulysses Bentley the fourth, 11 carries, 107 yards, and 1 touchdown. But then again, the big man, Trey Hare, 7 receptions, 102 yards, and 1 touchdown, all for Ole Miss. And then we're looking on the LSU Tigers side. 22 for 51 for Garrett Nussmeier, 43%. He threw the ball 51 times and only completed 22 of those passes. So, he was kind of in distress the whole game.
But the one, it only counts about that last one he threw. So it was really just such a good ball game. I was getting tired, but man, I stayed up and watched it. Like I said, as far as percentage-wise, Nussmeier did struggle, but he did what it took. This was by the numbers, by all the stats and everything. This was a dogfight, and I don't say that Ole Miss got exposed because they're still a fairly good team. But here we are with them. I won't say an upset because it was a 9-13.
Right. But the rest of Nussmeier's stats was 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions also. But the big man and the game-winning catch goes to Kyron Lacey, 5 receptions, 111 yards, and 1 tackle. But here's the big thing. We don't hardly talk about defense because, they're all just Whit Weeks, linebacker, right? 18 tackles, 10 solos, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass breakup, which was the last pass breakup on 3rd and long to stop the touchdown for Ole Miss going inside in overtime. So what a breakup. What a game from Whit Weeks.
Well, just jump into something real quick. How big was the targeting call on him that got overturned?
Now, okay, I will say this. I didn't see that. Was it first quarter or something? Second quarter?
It was early in the ball game. Yes,
I was watching Vanderbilt. I watched Vanderbilt for a long time. Vanderbilt in Tennessee and Florida. So I didn't go to that multi-screen until later
Well,
on.
if you get a chance, just because I kind of want your opinion, it kind of was targeting, but it kind of wasn't. I know there has to be 3 certain factors. I think Dart was sliding down, or he was trying to slide. It looked more like a fall, but Weeks didn't lunge. I mean, he wasn't falling into him, but he planted his feet and pushed his body, and the helmet did make contact. But how big would that have been if they'd have kept that targeting call?
He wouldn't have had 18 tackles.
No, that would have been game changing. So, but I think the refs did make the right call, because me and Brittany were talking about it. I didn't think there was enough to keep it. But I just didn't realize that was him until we were watching the end of the ball game. He come up with that big third down.
Yep.
And I told Brittany, I said, "Wow, that makes that whole targeting call really, really." That word I was looking for.
Yep, big.
Yeah, big.
Well, let's get into one more game before we get into our last final 2 big games. That ain't an upset alert, fellers. That is a you better get your stuff together alert, as South Carolina bout comes into Bryant-Denny Stadium and face the number 7 Alabama Crimson Tide as Alabama squeaks by 27-25.
Wow, I'd say South Carolina did everything right but win this ball game. Yeah. I think the field goal at the end, right. He shankopotamus the piss out of that last field goal, but then come back and Alabama's just I've never seen a Alabama team pre-Saban, even I know we're talking about Saban here, pre-Saban to look this bad as far as the turnovers, the miscues on the kickoff, and stuff like that. But the big story is really, well, let's do offense numbers, then I'll get into defense. Total yards for both teams. South Carolina had 374 to Alabama's 313. Passing yards, 242 to 209, another win for South Carolina. Rushing yards, 132 South Carolina to 104 against Alabama. So South Carolina led in every offensive category as far as numbers that they could. Technically, yeah. I told Brittany they should have won the ball game, and I thought Brittany was going to have to go to the hospital because she was going through it during this ball game.
Yeah, it was a bad game from Alabama, but like I said in the preview show, if you don't put a hand on Kennard, Debo, and Stewart, you're going to have issues. So let me get into some of these numbers, because one of the big factors of this thing is one of the defensive players. So on the South Carolina side, Lenore Sellers, 23 for 31, 74%, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Rocket Sanders, 16 carries, 78 yards, 1 touchdown. And then here it is, Kyle Kennard, 7 tackles, 6 solos, 2 sacks, and 3 tackle for losses.
And that says something. That was one of my notes I got on mine, is how well South Carolina's defense played. Had 4 sacks, 9 tackles for losses, was just really key to putting a hat on the backfield in Alabama with Jam and Hayes being stuck. Again, they barely had over 100 rushing yards, and I'm pretty sure some of that was some of Milroe's doings. But they just made the plays, but just couldn't finish.
Only 3 people ran the ball for Alabama yesterday, and that was Jam, Justice, and Jalen. That was it.
The 3 J's of – yeah, that was not so shocking, but that's their bread and butter. But like I said –
No, it is shocking, because they usually have a lot of people run the ball, even if it's like jet sweeps or something like that. It was really just odd to see. But I do want to say this, for the second week in a row. Did you hear that? Because I haven't heard anything about Ryan Williams.
He's still 17.
He's still 17, but guess what? Everybody's locking him down and doing stuff with him. He's not really making a name for himself right now. So has people watching enough film now to stop him from being that superstar athlete, quote unquote? Or is he just a regular wide receiver now, and the hype is like gone and all this and that?
I most definitely don't think that. To a certain extent, yes, some of the hype may have gone down, but this kid's still a stellar athlete. I think he's still going to be able to make plays. But I said, they have watched film. That's like in baseball when the first round of a pitcher faces is going to be bad, but once the batter gets locked in on that pitcher, it's a little bit better. But in this ball game, did we have any on his stats? But they're targeted on him, but which really I thought for Alabama opened up the floor for Bernard to have a pretty big ball game.
Yeah, Ryan Williams only had 4 catches for 32 yards. That was it.
Yeah, and I think they double teams and played man on him a good bit, but then to that back fact of, like I just said, that opened up Bernard, who had a stellar game. So I think it's smart coaching. But we knew going into this game that South Carolina has a defense that's probably one of the better in the SEC.
Yeah.
With the guys on that line. And I was just, and that's what Brittany kind of got mad at me, because we were watching the ball game, and I think it was the kickoff that they onside kicked or whatever. And I was like, yeah, get it. And she looked at me, she said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm still an Auburn fan. And she just gave me that look.
Yeah. But, running into Alabama's numbers, Jalen Milroe, 16 for 23, 69%, 209 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, which is kind of odd for him in this situation, but 18 carries and 36 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. And then not a lot of numbers here for Alabama. Then Keon Sapp on the defense, 12 tackles and 7 solos, and that's about as much as I could muster out of this Alabama team looking at their stats.
Well, like I said, it was a really intense game. But this is what we get week in, week out with the SEC play. So I love to see good close games. I do like the underdog. Of course, I'm not an Alabama fan. I do like when they lose, but which I got reminded about. But again, let's jump back to the Heisman thing. Milroe struggled. Do you think this takes him down a notch or two in the Heisman?
So I think the only way he can go up after these past 2 weeks is a stellar, clean performance in Neyland Stadium next week.
And how do you think that's going to reflect with that pretty good Tennessee defense?
That's what I'm saying. He has to have it. I didn't say he will get it. I said that's what he has to have.
Okay.
Now, I don't see it happening. That's why I said what I said, because like we've talked about before with this Tennessee team, well, it's kind of hard to say after they just Florida scored 17 on them and took them to overtime. But Tennessee's defense is good. Alabama's offensive line is not. Alabama's defensive line is not.
I really thought that Alabama got their butt whooped on both sides of the ball, offensive line and defensive line, all day. They had a few wins here and there, but nothing that they can look back on film like, hey, we dominated this certain position all game, and that's why we won. Because I don't think they did. That's like pouring piss out of a boot. It went straight to the ground.
Yeah, but you can still get whipped every single play and find a ways to win, and that's what Alabama did here.
Right.
A quick second, want to go back to the Magnolia Bowl, and I don't know if you noticed this or not, but the time that LSU led was never, and they won the ball game. So LSU never led that whole game. No, because when he called it, the time expired. So LSU never led the whole game and won the game, and that was a complete stat to me that I forgot, but I was going to put it in there.
That's a pretty good fact. Just still, that's again.
That just explained the whole game. And
right. Week in, week out, we're going to get these great games. I really think at the end of this, we should swap these 2 games because one was a bore fest, but.
Yeah, but I mean, it is.
It is the.
As the interstate game of the week. As number 2 Ohio State traveled to number 3 Eugene, Oregon, as the Ducks pulled it off 32-31 as a Will Howard mistake cost the Buckeyes.
And that's rather shocking for a really Heisman-type team, Howard. But like I said, first of all, this was the best game of the day. Well, it runs with the LSU game, but man, what a heck of a game. We were flipping back and forth, but I would stop on this one the most. Just when Ohio State would score, Oregon would come back. This was just a full-on fist fight all game.
You ever seen 2 heavyweights go at it and they just take shot for shot. And that's what these two teams did. This was a heavyweight matchup everybody wanted to watch. Oregon would give them a right hook. Ohio State would come in with an uppercut. It was an awesome game to watch. But, my heart lied with Ohio State this game. And as they just fall up short, as for the second week in a row, a quarterback does something stupid as time expires to lose their team the game, and both games should have been won by the other team, in my opinion.
And again, that's so shocking for Ware Howard to make this mistake. But that's crazy because I picked Ohio State on the show here, but then in our pick'em I did pick Oregon. But that's just. But no, I thought Dan Lanning. I thought coaching really. I think what's the guy from Ohio State? The one that looks like a psycho killer.
Randy.
Yeah, he looks crazy as all hell to me. But anyway, that's beside the point. Dan Lanning, he took that timeout, or then they got the penalty. It cost them 4 or 5 seconds. And I thought was really smart on the 12th man on the field. I think within 6 seconds left on the clock. And the decision-making went to crap, and it went to crap fast because, Howard stayed in the pocket a good 4 seconds before he even took off.
Same thing with Nico last week. These quarterbacks need to understand the time. I mean, I get it. I know, I've been in the game, and you've been in the game, and high-pressure games like that, and you're not worried about that. You're worried about the football scoring or getting the football if you're on the defense. You're not worried about the time, but that has to click at some point, and it didn't click for Will Howard because, if he would have got the first down, the time would have stopped for a little bit, and that had enough time to run up there and clock it.
I don't remember if they had any timeouts, but it would have been the first down.
That's why they actually had one, but he didn't slide to it. It said 0, 0, 0, 0.
That's okay. Yeah, I remember talking about you saying, well, he's got one timeout. If he can get it off, I said if he throws a pass, it's going to be incomplete, but he needs the first down. But crazy, a number 2 and 3 matchup was really good as far as number wise. Ohio State 467 to Oregon's 496. Total yards, passing 326 for the Buckeyes, 341 for the Ducks. And then on the running game was pretty close at 144 to 155. But I thought the biggest player of this game, I thought Dylan Gabriel played lights out. I thought he had a good Heisman game. Let me double check. Yeah, 2 touchdowns, almost 350 yards. But Jordan James was, I think, my favorite, the best player of this ball game. On 1 touchdown, whole bunch of yards. When they needed the extra yards, they'd give him the ball, and it would. I mean, he was. Now, granted, I had him on my fantasy team, but that's beside the point. I just, right. But Oregon just played really, really well, and they played 1 or 2 plays more than Ohio State did. I don't think you ever got to meet or know Coach Howard when he was at Raglan. That was his thing. There are 4 to 5 plays in a ball game that are going to determine who wins the ball game, and it's who you are and what you do on them plays that are going to win you this ball game. Yes, a football game has 140-something, 50 plays, but there's 4 or 5 that's going to determine the win. Like here, this game, the LSU game.
Yeah. So I just have found the AP Top 25 had just came out about 50 minutes ago. So I'm gonna run through that real quick. Number 1, as always, Texas. Number 2, Oregon. Number 3, Penn State. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5, Georgia. Top 5. 6, Miami. 7, Alabama. 8, LSU.
That's
9,
shocking.
Iowa State. And then 10, Clemson. Did you not hear a name yet? Oh, here it is. Number 11, Tennessee. They fell after they won. Number 12, Notre Dame. Number 13, BYU. Number 14, Texas A&M. And then, number 15, Boise State. 16 is Indiana. 17 is Kansas State. 18 is Ole Miss. 19 is Missouri. 20 is Pitt Panthers. I think that's what they are. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. 21 is SMU. 22 is Illinois. And here's the big kicker. These last 3. 23, Army. 24, Michigan. And 25 is Navy.
Oh, man, that's Man, there was a few shockers in there because I didn't think Alabama played enough to stay at that 7 spot. I mean, yes, they
I don't
won.
think Tennessee should have failed, even though they
Right.
won bigger than Alabama did, and Alabama was like, oh yeah, we're still the same. And then Tennessee, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see it in your eyes. You're fixing to throw a fit.
Anywho,
back to the game. Just really good. Just another great Saturday here with football. And again, this is probably one of the best games of the year so far, which is what we expect out of 2 versus 3. So,
right. So let's get on down to our game of the week, which was number 1 Texas went into Dallas to play the number 18 Oklahoma Sooners. Final score 34-3, as in the Red River rivalry goes to Texas.
yeah, I know this is our game of the week, and it was supposed to have super hype and this, that, and the other, but this was a snooze fest. It wasn't, the first quarter. Yeah, the first quarter. I mean, it drug on and drug on. No team was really, because it was start of the second quarter. It was 3-0, and like I said, Ewers' first game back. Manning got to ride the pine for a little bit, and he struggled early, but then coming back, scoring 21 in the second, and then just really opening it up at the end. I just didn't like this game. As far as watching it, just wasn't appetizing to watch. But Texas did Texas things and blew out and got the gold hat, but I just
Yeah,
total.
I don't.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, the bigger picture was, we expected this game to be closer than it was.
Right.
As you alluded to, Texas, that's the team. They didn't score 21 points until 12 minutes to go, or 12 minutes to go in the second quarter. So, I mean, like you said, snooze fest at all. But as Texas evolved, figuring out that young quarterback in Michael Hawkins Jr., which is the first true freshman to ever start against Texas, and that very veteran defense, I figured them out. Quentin Ewers, 20 for 29, 68%, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And then Quinn Wisner, 13 carries, 118 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then Anthony Hill Jr. on the defense, 11 tackles, 7 solos, 2 sacks, 3.5 tackles for losses. On the Oklahoma side, Michael Hawkins Jr., 19 for 30, 63%, 148 yards. And then Danny Stutzman, 6 tackles, 2 solos, and 1.5 tackle for losses.
Yeah, the Texas defense, yes, they are number 1 team in the country, but their defense got in it. 11 tackles for losses, which is big. And then to accompany that with 5 sacks is a really good defensive stat. Again, we thought this game could be closer because of Oklahoma's defense, but I thought it was going to be because it's going to be such a snooze fest, like a 6-9 game or something like that. Texas had 406 total offensive yards, 249 in the air, 177 on the ground. On the other side of the ball, Oklahoma only had 237 total, 89 rushing yards, which, I mean, that's a pretty stinky for any team, whether you're a contender or pretender. And then the 148 by Michael Hawkins Jr., which I thought he had good spots. He tucked and ran the ball a good bit. For being a redshirt freshman, I think the kid's got a bright true freshman. Okay, but I think this kid really got a bright future.
Yeah, and that was all of our games. Great week of football this week. But as we always do on the Under Review podcast on Recap Week, we're going to hit you with a little numbers. All right, here we go. The stats standings for the SEC. In passing yards, your top leader is, once again, Jackson Dart at 2,384. Garrett Nussmeier taking in second at 1,989. And then in third, Carson Beck from Georgia at 1,818 yards. Going over to passing touchdowns is Garrett Nussmeier leads with 18. Carson Beck in second with 15, and then Jackson Dart in third with 14. Going over to rushing yards, Dylan Sampson is once again at the top from Tennessee at 699 yards. Henry Parrish Jr. from Ole Miss, 612 yards. And then Le'Veon Moss, who was off, from Texas A&M, 566 yards. Going into rushing touchdowns, Dylan Sampson with another great performance brings his total up to 15, which is the most in the SEC through week 6. Jalen Milroe had 11, is at 11, and then Jaquindon Jackson is at 3rd with 10. Going over to receiving yards, Trey Harris from Ole Miss almost breaking the century mark at 987 yards. Ryan Williams from Alabama bringing in the 2nd spot at 576. And then Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas at 552. 4 receiving touchdowns. There's a 4-way tie with 6 touchdowns, and that is Keandre Lambert-Smith from Auburn, Kyron Lacey from LSU, Trey Harris from Ole Miss, and then Ryan Williams from Alabama. And that is your under review stat standings.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. I mean, just an overall recap, just a heck of a week of football. We knew it was going to be good, but we didn't think it was going to be this good.
Yeah, it was, once again, just a great week, and I love it. You know, couldn't ask for a better way to watch football, was having the SEC play to what they're doing. But, you know, guys, we're getting towards the end of our episode, and we just want to take this time and want to thank our sponsor again. Chuck's eating hair, apparently.
Chuck's eating hair. He ain't going to be happy about it.
Chuck's eating an hair, you know. Call him. It's about to get cold, and we know y'all want to be hot, but not me. I keep my hair on all year long. But we know y'all want to be hot, so call Chuck's eating an hair. He does great things for his services. And we also want to thank our buddies at the Dadpod, Hunter Brasfield and Nicholas Adams, Hayden Coker Media, or HCS Media, and the Hayden Coker Show. Jud Dickinson for everything that he does, and Brandon Trammell also. Also, going back to that Texas game, I did forget this, and it's probably useless now. But, you know, ain't no love in Oklahoma for Texas this week, as the great Luke Combs would always say. But that is the country music artist Luke Combs, not the big-headed Luke Combs that plays on the Dadpod and strums the guitar every once in a while. We're not talking about that one. But
yeah,
I forgot to say that. I've been working on that since yesterday, and I felt really proud of it.
You've been holding that one in?
Yeah. But, you know, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, listeners. Get ready. Go ahead.
Let me jump in real quick. Just for, again, first of all, thank our fans. We'd love to see some more comments from you, some more questions. We're going to maybe try to do a poll this week or something. But just for another reminder, our merch is out. Our hats, our shirts. Go look at them. Shoot us a message. We'll get some prices to you. I'm excited. This is one of the comfiest shirts, and the hats. I don't know if they'll fit Hunter's head, but
probably not. They might. It's a snapback, so I mean, it's not.
He'd have to use the long one on the back.
One size fits most, you know.
Yeah, that's a different discussion on that waterhead.
But you know, as we wrap it up, thank you all the fans. God loves you. We love you here at the Under Review Podcast. Hope to see you next Thursday, when we come back at you once again. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time as we go Under Review. Can't find it.
I was trying to do the
whatever it is.
Who is that?
It's Pops. I guess he said.